Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is a beautiful day to be in the kitchen, and I am back with a brand new fall series that's all about pies. And I am really excited to share with y'all some new pie recipes. Now, these are not new per se, but they are a new take on some old classics that we're all fairly familiar with. So despite whatever pie is your favorite, there are variations to making your favorite pie, and that's what this new pie series is all about. A new take on an old favorite classic pie recipe. Any pie that you make, regardless of what traditionally it is, can always be changed by simply switching around a few things, adding or removing a few things. Your favorite apple pie, you can add raisins to it. There is an apple and raisin pie, which is an old recipe, but when we think of traditional pies, we don't think of raisins in an apple pie, but you can add raisins to it. You can add stemmed ginger to an apple pie and make a ginger apple pie. You can add walnuts to the filling and make a walnut apple pie. You can change a pie by changing the crust. You can use a graham cracker crust for a pie. It doesn't have to be a pastry crust. You can use graham crackers. You can use nuts for a crust if you're doing a more keto-friendly version or a more gluten-free version. You can use walnuts. You can use pecans. There are many different types of pies that you can make. So this series is a new take on an old classic pie recipe. Now, today's pie recipe is a cranberry and apple pie. Now, cranberries are in season, and I'm glad because I actually like cranberries. They are, for those of you who may not be familiar with cranberries, they are a small round fruit. We call them berries. I'm not 100% sure if they're berries or not, but they're similar to a blueberry in size, but instead of being rounded, they're more of an oval type of fruit, and they're a little firm. They're not squishy, and they're not juicy until you start to cook them. So, like, you can't smush these like you can a blueberry or a raspberry. They're more sturdy. They're very sturdy, and they have like a little hard shell, not hard but firm shell, and they are very tart. So if you think of other tart things that we like to cook with, such as rhubarb or lemons or whatever, these are right on par with rhubarb. These are sour. Now, here in the United States, we all know these as the stepping stone to cranberry sauce. You know, you put some cranberries on the stove, you add some sugar. Okay, you add a lot of sugar and you cook it down. Sometimes some people add orange, lemon juice, apple juice. Some people add apples. And you cook it until it gets this thick mess. And because these are so tarty and so sour, they have a very high pectin content. And so therefore they gel. So if you've ever bought a can of jelly cranberry sauce, yes, Mama too bought those. I'm not a fan, I have to admit, of the canned cranberry sauce. It's a little too sweet and a little too bouncy for me. I like something a little bit more loose. But if you've ever bought a can of cranberry sauce, this is exactly what you were eating. You know what you were eating. Now, you can get, speaking of cranberry sauce, which this is totally off point, but cranberry sauce, you can get whole berry cranberry sauce, which actually has the cranberries in it. But there is also just the jelly version, which is all the solids have been strained out, poured into a can in a mold. And when you open the can, you tip it out, you get this round solid mass, and it's sliced. And here in the United States, it's served with turkey, cranberries, cranberry sauce right alongside the turkey. And then there's dressing and mashed potatoes and sweet potatoes and all those other delicious things. So this is the fruit before anything is done to it. Now, cranberries is not something you necessarily want to just run around snacking on. You're very bold if you do. I have to confess I have tried it because they're good for you. They are very good for you. But, you know, unless you're a person that just loves super sour, like munching on rhubarb, you may not want to just gobble these little berries. But now when you add some sugar to these little berries, well, they just become a whole new thing. So we like them in tea. As a matter of fact, throughout the winter, we drink cranberry tea every single week. We drink cranberry and hibiscus tea. It's very high in vitamin C, extremely high in vitamin C. Like you really can't get much higher for this type of stuff. So we drink cranberry and hibiscus tea, and I just throw cranberries into the pot, and, you know, make a tea, which I'll share that recipe eventually. I think I've shared it before on my Facebook page, but I'll share it with you guys hopefully fairly soon because it's a really good tea. But you can use frozen cranberries for this pie, but I would suggest fresh. So today I am going to use fresh cranberries, and the best thing of it is, speaking of cranberries, I sound like an ad for a cranberry commercial, but speaking of cranberries, these do freeze very well. So you can just put them in a zippy bag, pop them in the freezer, and they will stay frozen and fresh for whenever you need them. Now, because this is an apple and cranberry pie, I have some apples here. Now, I have sweet variety of apples, and these are local apples from a local family orchard, not too far from where we live in the mountains. And I have one teeny tiny Granny Smith apple. That is because I want the sweetness and the softness from these apples, but I do want enough tart to help hang out with the cranberries to make sure your pie doesn't get soupy, because it can become a bit of a soupy pie. Now, you don't want to use all granny. You don't want to use all the grannies, because the grannies can make your pie, number one, very sour, and it can also make it very stodgy like. So even though cranberries have tons of pectin, the granny is going to help out balance it all out. Plus, granny is a little sweet, so granny will help the sweetness as well. Now, we're not just going to depend on cranberries to help set the texture of the pie. We're going to add some flour and some cornstarch as well. If you're making a gluten-free version, just use all cornstarch. You may have to drop the cornstarch a tiny bit. I haven't tested this gluten-free. They are not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio, cornstarch to flour. So I would use a couple grams less of flour versus cornstarch. And then I have, because I love cranberry and orange, so I have an orange, and I'm going to use the zest, not the juice. I have, for the fall flavors we all love, I have some cinnamon, some nutmeg, and some ground ginger. And then, because nobody would eat this pie if there wasn't some sugar in it, I'm sorry, not even I would eat this pie without some sugar, I have some brown sugar and some granulated sugar, and the recipe will be in the description box below. Now, I have a ready baked pie crust that I baked off earlier, and I'll show you. This is my all butter pie crust recipe. I actually shared that recipe on my channel, and I'll leave a link for you to check that out. The recipe is included in the video, and I blind baked it in the oven just to set the crust. You don't want this to be you don't want to start off with a raw pie crust. Not for something that has this amount of liquid and moving filling in it. You don't want to do that. You can end up with a raw pie crust. So I pre-baked it, and it's ready to go. It's not completely baked, but as you can see, it's getting there. So this is ready to go, cooled, and I'm just going to set that aside and grab that later when we get together. Now, when we get the filling together. Now, for the topping, I'm going to do a crumble topping. But you can take, if you have 2 pie crusts, and the recipe that I shared does make 2 pie crusts. So you can make a lattice top or a whole top or however you want to. I wanted a crumble topping for this pie. Number one, it's a little bit more sweet because it has way more sugar than your actual pie crust ever does. So in this bowl, I have some brown sugar, I have some all-purpose flour, and I have some cinnamon. And then to this, I'm going to add some softened unsalted butter. And I do need to add a bit of salt to my crumble topping. Now I'm going to use one whole stick of butter for this entire recipe, but half of the butter is going to go into the crumble, and then the other half is going to go into the filling, and we're going to pre-cook the filling on the stove top. What that does is that sets the filling before it goes into the pie crust. If you put raw apples in and raw cranberries in, you mix it all up, and you're running a risk of a pie not baking correctly. Not necessarily properly, but correctly. You could end up with overcooked apples and half-cooked cranberries, or you can end up with overcooked cranberries and half-cooked apples, and the filling won't set properly. So it's two things to pre-baking the filling, to pre-cooking the filling. And I'm going to run through those really, really quickly. The reason, as I just outlined, the first reason of why you want to pre-cook it, but the second reason is all fruits, no matter where they come from, they always vary in sweetness. So I may say this amount of sugar for the apples that I was working with, but your apples may be sweeter or they may be tardier. So the sugar is always a give or a take anytime you're baking with fruit. I can't help it what it is. It's always a give and a take with that sugar. So some apples that I have may have been sweeter, and I'm thinking, oh, I got really sweet apples. But all apples does not come, and when you get a bag of apples, all of it doesn't come from one apple tree. Even in a local orchard, they have, hundreds of trees. They pick all these apples and they throw them in a bin and you're getting apples. So you have no idea where they come from. And another thing about apple trees, the fruit can be sweeter depending on how the tree and the fruit faces the sun. So, if you have an apple tree that faces north, well, your apples on the east and the west is going to be sweeter than your apples facing north. So all of that can vary and this cause your fruit to vary in its sweetness. So pre-cooking the filling gives you the opportunity to kind of know how sweet it is. If I want a little bit more sugar, or if I want to, say, that was a little too sweet, I'll add a few more cranberries, kind of help balance out that sweetness. Or if you want to reserve some of the sugar and add a bit of it in, and then add more. This gives you control over your food and to your liking. And that is my favorite thing about cooking from scratch in your own kitchen, because you can make these decisions yourself. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to first start off by making my crumble topping. So I'm just going to start off with the crumble topping. If you're making a lot of pies, and I say this as a person who bakes a lot of pies at once, you do this in the food processor. It's much quicker, much easier. But this is just for one pie, so I'm not going to bother pulling out a food processor. I do need to add a bit of salt to this. You don't want to make a crumble with topping with no salt, because you could end up with something that doesn't have the flavor. If you've ever cooked something or baked something that didn't have much taste, you probably didn't put enough salt. You don't want to put too much salt, because then it could have a funny flavor. So I'm just going to use a fork to make this and just mix the sugar into the flour. The cinnamon is definitely in there because I can smell it. Okay, now here is my softened butter. Why softened butter? Well, for this recipe, you want to make sure that the butter is softened, because your crumble topping won't be, if you use cold butter, your crumble topping, I'm going to set this aside because I need the rest of this for the filling. So I'm just going to set that aside. You need the crumble topping to be soft, because if it is in any way, if the butter is cold, it will make your crumble topping dry. And it'll just kind of sit on top of the pie. It won't bake up in those beautiful crumbles and all the little bumps and humps that we like to see in a crumble pie. So that's why you want softened butter. Now, you won't refrigerate this. You just leave it at room temperature because otherwise it could get cold. But you can make this ahead. I make large amounts of it and just keep it in the freezer. And if it was softened when you made it, it will retain those clumps even in the freezer. It'll still retain the clumps. But if it's sandy and dusty, it won't do no matter what you do. So just go ahead and mix that together. That only took a few seconds. Now I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla bean paste to this. I'm a person who firmly believes that everything deserves some flavor, whether it's, and you can use vanilla extract. I'm just using vanilla bean paste because I really like vanilla bean paste. But I'm a person who firmly believes that every layer of your food should have flavor. It shouldn't just be some parts of it taste good and some parts of it is like, no. Flavor every bit. So yes, I do add vanilla extract to my pie crust sometimes. Okay. We're definitely going to add some in the filling. All right. This is done. So we can set the crumble topping aside and peel the apples and get ready to cook the filling. Now I'm just going to give these apples a good peel, and I'm going to slice them up into, you can dice them or you can slice them. As I always say with any pie recipe, the shape is up to you. It's not going to help them cook more or less on how you cut your apples. That doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's the type of apple that makes the difference of how it cooks, not necessarily the shape. So you can slice them or you can dice them. So just go ahead and get these peeled. And I am going to slice. I choose to slice. So I'll slice them. So my apples are peeled and sliced, and I've got my cranberries washed and ready. So I'll meet you over by the stove. So I'm going to take that reserved half a stick of butter and just put it right into the pan. And into the butter, I'm going to go ahead and add in my sugar. That's something else that smells real good. Brown sugar does have its own flavor because of the molasses. Now I'm going to add in my apples. So, whee, over she goes. And the moment apples hit sugar, they start to do things. That's the best way to describe it. They start to do things. So the liquids start to come out of your apples. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a nice little pinch of salt. Not a fat pinch this time, but just a pinch of salt. And when the juices start to bubble out of your apples, you want to just let these cook for a few minutes until your apples just start to soften a weensy teensy bit. Maybe about 2 to 3 minutes. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the spices in. And I'm going to go ahead and add the cranberries in. That smells good. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add in my orange zest, or you could use lemon zest. Love it. Okay, that's good. There's always some hanging out on the back. Okay. And I'll save that orange. That'll be my lunch. so we've got, they're still popping. I think I'm not going to come away, I hope I come away unscathed, but I don't think so. Cranberries can be very rude. Okay, now it is time to stir in the flour. Now here, I've just got a bit of water. You can use some of the liquid that comes out of here, but I just like to add just a tiny bit of cold water. Don't use hot water. You can use hot water, but it becomes a little bit of a different story. So what this does is just makes a little paste, and like that, just becomes a little paste and allows me to remove any lumps, see, before I add it to the filling. And you want to be quick when you do this. Be quick, because it's gonna start clumping straight away. So put it right in and then start stirring. And don't stop stirring. At this point, don't stop stirring. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat off. And I'm just going to spread this mixture out and let it cool just a tiny bit before you pour it into the pie crust, because at this point it is hot. So just let it cool a little bit, and then I'm going to add some vanilla bean paste. You know, I love my vanilla bean paste to the filling. Now, I want to taste it, because I want to make sure I'm happy with the sweetness. At this point, if I'm not happy, I can add more sugar. Once it goes into the oven and it starts baking, the only thing you can do at that point is just serve it with ice cream. Which, by the way, if that happens, that's a good tip. Serve it with ice cream. So, thank you, Jesus. Let's have a taste. That's good. Doesn't need anything. That's good. That's delicious. You could, of course, just serve this like it is. It doesn't need to go into a pie crust, by the way. But we're going to go ahead and put it in. So carefully. This is scary. Okay. I think I did make a mess. I did. I made a tiny mess on the side. Oh well. Make sure I get cranberries. You might have a little bit of filling left over, but that's okay. This is, I mean, you can eat this like it is. So it's not, I'm not gonna be upset if I have some. A little bit left. Not at all. Okay, and clean up, because that's a little messy. That looks good. Now, let's add the streusel topping. Now, the crumble topping, as I said earlier, it shouldn't be too sandy, but it should have these little bumpy, crumbly bits to it, which is very important, because it's the crumbly bits that's going to stay more together as it bakes. The finer it is, the more it'll just bake right into the crust, and it'll just blend into the filling, and it'll just blend right in. Okay. Now so just use a spoon and sprinkle it on, and be generous. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to use all of this. Just sprinkle it on. The filling itself is going to soak up quite a bit. So you don't really have to worry about it. It will soak up quite a bit, which is why you really want to pile it on, because it's gonna, the pie is gonna sink the more cooked it gets. So you don't want to think, oh, I've got too much. No, you haven't. As a matter of fact, I'm just gonna go ahead and pour the rest of this on. Make another mess, but that's okay. There we are. Okay, set that aside and just tidy up the edge. It runs over in some places, but that's okay. Just tidy up the edge. Now, you definitely want to put this pie on a sheet tray before you put it into the oven, because otherwise it's going to bubble and do all of those things. And you do not want to have to clean up burned sugar in the oven. Ask me how I know. It's very traumatic. It's traumatizing. You don't want to do it. Now, into the oven. Well, onto a baking tray she goes, and into the oven they go. And this pie is going to bake for 50 minutes to 1 hour until it is bubbly all around. It's bubbly. And the topping has gotten nicely browned. You want to bake this the middle to near upper rack in the oven, because when we blind bake our pie crust, we put it at the bottom of the oven. But now when we're baking, we want to make sure we're square in the middle or somewhere nearer the top. Not right up at the top, but not anywhere near the bottom. So into the oven she goes. So the pie is just out of the oven and it is bubbling. It's all bubbly and juicy, and that is exactly what you want to see. And that was precisely 50 minutes. So now we just need to let it cool. Once it's cool completely, oh, this is going to be so good. Can't wait. So the cranberry apple pie is done. It's out of the oven and it's cooled down nicely, and it looks so good and it smells so good. Now, ideally, you want to let this pie cool completely before you cut it, because it's still setting up the texture. So fortunately, I can't cut into it right now, but I hope you will give this recipe a try. I hope you've enjoyed the recipe. I hope you would give it a try. If you do, give me some feedback and let me know, what do you think? And let me know what pies you are looking forward to making. And the good Lord willing, I will see you guys again in another pie episode, because I'm doing a series all about pies, a new take on a traditional pie recipe. So there will be pie episodes coming soon, so stay tuned. In the meantime, take care, y'all. Bye.